The sky was red. Not like sunrise, not like sunset, but a deep, angry red that stretched over the horizon of the deserted planet. Dr. Elara Hayes gritted her teeth as the spaceship shook violently. Alarms screamed inside the cabin. Warning lights flashed everywhere. She had been on missions before, but nothing like this. Nothing that made her stomach twist and her heart pound as hard as now. Elara clutched the console, her fingers sliding over the controls. Sparks flew. The engines groaned. The ship, the pride of humanity's exploration fleet, was dying. She tried to contact the base. "Control, this is Hayes. I'm going down." Only static answered her. A deafening crash threw her forward. The world turned into chaos. Fire and smoke filled the cabin. The smell of burning metal and fuel was strong. Then darkness swallowed her. When Elara opened her eyes, the world had changed. The ship was broken, torn into pieces. Metal was bent like paper. Smoke rose from everywhere. Outside the broken window, she saw sand. Endless sand. Yellow and orange dunes stretched in every direction. The red sky burned above. The planet was deserted. Dead, pain shot through her leg. She groaned, crawling out of the wreckage. Her hands were scratched, her uniform torn. Her heart raced. She checked herself, no major injuries. But the ship? Gone. She was alone. Or at least that's what she thought. She stepped carefully on the sand, looking around. The air was thin and dry, almost hot enough to burn. Her mind tried to process what had just happened. How had the ship fallen here? Why was no one else alive? And then she heard it. A sound she could not identify. It was low at first, like the wind, but then sharper. A growl, a cry? Elara froze. She scanned the dunes, her hand reaching for a piece of metal as a makeshift weapon. The sound grew closer. Something moved in the shadows near the wreckage, and then she saw it. Tall, slim, silver-skinned, eyes glowing a deep blue. Its body was not human, yet it walked on two legs. Its gaze locked on her. Elara's heart jumped. She knew it was an alien. She had studied them in theory, but never seen one alive. Never this close. The alien did not attack. It only stared, head tilting slightly as if it was curious. Elara's breath caught. She wanted to run, but her leg throbbed too much. The alien took a careful step toward her. Her mind screamed to fight. Her body froze. And then, without warning, a huge sand creature, part lizard, part spider, lunged from behind the wreckage at her. Elara screamed. Her legs failed her. She stumbled. The creature's claws were sharp, moving fast. She braced for death, but a silver hand shot out. The alien grabbed her, pulling her out of the path of the beast. It struck the creature with inhuman strength. The monster screeched and vanished into the sand, leaving only footprints. Elara collapsed on the ground, breathing heavily. She looked at the alien. Its eyes were still on her. Not aggressive, not hostile, protecting. She realized she had no choice. Alone on this planet, both of them were survivors. They needed each other. She took a deep breath. I'm Elara Hayes, she said, unsure if it could understand. The alien made a sound, soft, melodic, almost like a whisper. Then it pointed to itself and moved its hand. A name? She could not understand, but she nodded. Okay, Ka'rel, she guessed. It gave a small tilt of its head. Storm clouds began to form above. The wind picked up, carrying fine sand that cut at her skin. Elara knew she had little time. She helped Ka'rel gather broken pieces of the ship. They built a small shelter just as the first sandstorm hit. Sand whipped around them, blinding, deafening. But together, they survived. That night, as Elara huddled close to the alien for warmth, she felt a strange mix of fear and curiosity. Who was Ka'rel? What had he survived? And most importantly, could they make it on this deadly planet together? Above them, the red sky glowed ominously, and somewhere in the distance, something moved. Something alive. Something watching Elara's journey had begun, and she had no idea how dangerous, or how extraordinary, it would become. The sandstorm raged all night. Elara pressed herself against Ka'rel's cold silver body, using him as a shield against the whipping wind. At first she had been afraid of him. His glowing blue eyes, his strange shape, the way he moved like liquid shadows, everything about him screamed danger. But now, after the storm, she realized something. He had saved her life. Twice. Morning came with a strange calm. The red sky had faded slightly, leaving pale orange light across the desert. Elara crawled out from their makeshift shelter. Ka'rel followed silently, his eyes scanning the horizon. The ship was gone, mostly buried under sand, and there was nothing but dunes for miles. Elara sighed. "We can't stay here," she said. Ka'rel tilted his head and made a sound almost like a question. She realized they had no shared language. Not words, not letters, nothing. But they could understand each other in small ways. Gestures, expressions, even moods. Survival forced them to communicate. She looked at Ka'rel. "We work together," she said slowly, pointing to the sand, to the sky, and finally to herself and him. He stared for a long moment, then nodded. It was the first sign of real trust between them. They spent the next hours gathering what they could from the shipwreck. Pieces of metal, scraps of fabric, and small tools could be useful. Ka'rel used his hands to pull heavy debris, moving things Elara could not budge alone. Every time she watched him, she marveled at his strength. Humans could never move like that. And yet, despite his power, he protected her. Food was a problem. There was none. Water was worse. Elara scanned the horizon, hoping for signs of life, rivers, even puddles. But the planet offered nothing. Ka'rel seemed to understand her panic. He led her to a small canyon nearby, pointing to the rocks and touching the air. When she looked closer, she realized tiny crystals embedded in the stones shimmered with moisture. Not much, but enough to drink. The nights were the worst. Cold swept across the dunes like a living thing. Elara huddled closer to Ka'rel for warmth, noticing how different his body was. Silver skin glimmered under the moonlight, smooth and almost liquid-like. And yet his heart, she could feel it through some strange bond, was steady, slow, patient. Not human, not alien, something in between. As days passed, they began learning each other's patterns. Elara used gestures to explain tasks, digging, collecting, creating fire with sparks from the ship. Ka'rel followed quickly, mirroring her movements. Slowly, the walls between them began to crumble. Not fully, not yet, but enough for survival. One evening, as the sun dipped behind jagged dunes, Ka'rel paused. He made a sound, low and melodic, and pointed to the horizon. Elara squinted. Shadows moved, fast, unpredictable shapes in the sand. Not sand creatures. Something intelligent. Watching them, waiting, Elara's heart pounded. She grabbed Ka'rel's arm. "Enemies?" she asked. He made a sharp warning sound and crouched, ready to strike. They could not run. They had no weapons, only each other. The shapes moved closer. Then, as suddenly as they appeared, they vanished into the dunes. Elara exhaled shakily. Ka'rel relaxed slightly, but his eyes glowed brighter in the dim light. He was alert, ready, always ready. That night they built a stronger shelter. Sandstorms could return at any moment. And something else, something alive, was out there. Elara studied Ka'rel as he moved silently around their camp. He was careful, precise, protective, not just instinct. There was intelligence, awareness, even concern. She realized slowly that she was not alone. Not really. Not just physically. Something about Ka'rel's presence gave her courage. Not trust yet, but hope. Survival had a strange way of making unlikely allies. Before sleep, she looked at him and whispered, though he might not understand, "We survive. Together." He tilted his head and made a sound that almost seemed like agreement. The desert wind howled outside, but inside the small shelter, two beings from completely different worlds were starting to form a bond. Tomorrow, they would have to face the planet again, scavenging for food, searching for water, watching the dunes for movement. Danger was everywhere, and still, they had each other. And in the back of her mind, Elara knew this. Something about Ka'rel, this strange alien, was more than just survival. Something in him was extraordinary, something that could change everything. Above, the red sky darkened with approaching clouds, hinting at storms yet to come. But for now, they had made it through one more day. Side by side, human and alien, survivors of a crash on a dead planet, and neither of them could imagine what the next day would bring. The next morning, the desert was quiet. Too quiet. Elara woke before the sun rose, her skin chilled by the thin, dry air. Ka'rel was already moving silently, scanning the horizon. His glowing blue eyes seemed sharper in the dim light, picking out shapes in the sand that she could not even see. Elara wrapped herself in a torn blanket and followed him. She did not need to speak. Ka'rel's movements were precise, almost like a dance. He led her over dunes and through jagged rocks, guiding her with small gestures. Somewhere deep in the desert he had sensed something. Hours passed. The heat of the day began to rise, burning the skin beneath her suit. And then she saw it, a strange glow, pale and soft, coming from behind a massive dune. She squinted, shielding her eyes. The light pulsed almost like a heartbeat. Ka'rel stopped, crouched low, and held a hand up. His eyes scanned the sand. The glow came again, moving slightly. Elara swallowed hard. She had studied alien worlds, scanned ruins in history, but nothing like this. The glow wasn't natural. Not at all. Together, they approached cautiously. As they drew closer, the sand beneath their feet shifted, revealing something incredible. Ruins. Massive ancient structures half buried in sand, walls covered with carvings that shimmered faintly in the morning light. The shapes were tall, angular, unlike anything humans or Ka'rel's people had built before. Elara ran her fingers along a carving. Symbols unknown but strangely familiar. Images of humans and aliens, together, working, building, creating. She stumbled back, astonished. This can't be, she whispered. Ka'rel's eyes glowed brighter, almost as if he understood her words without hearing them. They stepped inside. The air was cooler here, strangely breathable. Dust swirled in shafts of light from cracks above. And then, the chamber opened into a large hall. Floating orbs of light hovered in the air, moving gently as if alive. When Ka'rel extended a hand toward them, the orbs drifted closer, surrounding him. Elara's heart pounded. She felt something strange, warmth like an invisible thread connecting her to Ka'rel. She could sense his thoughts, his calm and his awe, and then a whisper, a sound inside her mind. Faint but clear, not words, not language, but understanding. The orbs responded to their bond, to something deep and ancient inside both of them. Suddenly the ground trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. The ruins were unstable, fragile after centuries. Ka'rel grabbed Elara's hand and pulled her toward the exit. They ran, dodging falling stones. The glowing orbs followed, drifting behind them as if guiding their escape. Outside, the desert seemed brighter, as though the ruins themselves had shared some energy with them. Ka'rel paused, looking back at the crumbling structures. For a moment he lowered his head, as if paying respect to something lost. Elara watched him. She felt a strange connection, stronger than before. Not just trust, not just survival. Something deeper. Something that hummed inside her like the ruins themselves. She realized this bond was changing her, shaping her in ways she could not yet understand. As they moved away from the ruins, Elara noticed the shadows in the sand again, the same shapes from before moving just beyond the dunes. She shivered. The planet was alive with mysteries and not all of them friendly. Ka'rel's body tensed and she instinctively knew they were being watched. They made camp that night near a rocky outcrop. The sky burned red again, signaling another storm. Elara couldn't sleep. Her mind raced with questions. Who had built the ruins? Why were humans and aliens depicted together, centuries before any first contact? And what was this strange connection she felt with Ka'rel? Ka'rel settled near her, silent but vigilant. She could feel his pulse, the rhythm of his breathing, the quiet intelligence in his mind. The bond between them had grown stronger, not just for survival now, but for something more, something that neither of them could yet name. In the distance, the sand shifted again. Small shapes, intelligent and deliberate, moved toward the ruins' remains. Elara's chest tightened. They had witnessed something incredible today. Ancient power, secrets of the planet, and an unexplainable bond. But danger was still out there, waiting, watching, calculating. Elara stared at Ka'rel and whispered softly, "We need to know what this planet wants us to find." Ka'rel tilted his head, making a sound that almost felt like agreement. Tomorrow they would return to the ruins, even though it was dangerous. Something inside both of them knew that answers waited there. And something told Elara that whatever they discovered next, it would change them forever. The desert was quiet again, but Elara could feel the tension in the air. Every grain of sand seemed alive, whispering secrets she could not understand. Ka'rel moved beside her, silent and precise, his glowing eyes scanning every shadow. Today they were returning to the ruins. She did not know what awaited them, but something deep inside told her it was important. As they approached the ruins, Elara's heart raced. The glowing orbs were gone, but the walls still shimmered faintly in the morning light. The carvings seemed to shift under her gaze as though alive. She reached out to touch them, tracing the figures of humans and aliens working side by side. Her mind filled with questions. Who were they? And why did it feel like this place was calling her? Ka'rel made a low sound, a melodic hum that seemed to resonate with the carvings. Elara turned to look at him. She could feel it again, that strange invisible connection. Not just in thoughts but in feelings. A warmth, a presence, something that tied them together. She realized she could almost sense what Ka'rel was thinking. Caution, curiosity, wonder. The bond was growing stronger. Every shared glance, every gesture, every movement built something unspoken between them. Elara's fear of him had faded. In its place was trust and something else, something she could not name. They entered a hidden chamber deep inside the ruins. The air was cooler, almost alive, filled with a hum that vibrated through their bodies. Crystals embedded in the walls pulsed gently, reacting to their presence. Ka'rel's hand hovered over one of them, and the crystal glowed brighter as if recognizing him. Elara stepped closer. "It responds to you," she whispered. Ka'rel nodded and his eyes met hers. The hum of the crystal seemed to strengthen, filling her with warmth, and for a moment, she felt Ka'rel's emotions as clearly as her own. Fear, wonder, and an almost childlike curiosity. Hours passed as they explored the chamber. Elara tried to understand the carvings, while Ka'rel examined the crystals and energy patterns. Together they uncovered a strange device, ancient but still active. When Ka'rel touched it, the room lit up with soft blue light. Images appeared in the air, humans and aliens walking together, teaching, building cities, and raising children. It was a vision of harmony, of two species connected by something greater. Elara gasped. This is history. Bruce, why? Why us? Ka'rel made a sound, low and thoughtful. She felt the meaning behind it. The bond between their two species was ancient, meant to continue even after the world around them had fallen apart. The connection between them deepened further. Elara felt Ka'rel's heartbeat in her chest, his thoughts in her mind, his emotions brushing against her own, and in that moment she realized something startling. She no longer felt like a human alone on a hostile planet. She felt part of something bigger, something shared, something alive between them. The moment was broken by a sudden tremor. The chamber shook, dust falling from the ceiling. Elara stumbled, and Ka'rel caught her effortlessly. The bond surged in that instant, a protective force, as if the ruins themselves were aware of their connection and responded to it. Outside, the desert winds howled, sand whipping across the ruins. But inside the chamber, the bond between human and alien remained unshaken. Elara sat against Ka'rel's side, her hand brushing his, feeling a pulse of energy she could not explain. She realized that trust had become more than survival. It had become attachment, connection, even care. For the first time since the crash, she allowed herself to hope. Perhaps in this strange, deserted world they were not alone, not in spirit and not in destiny. They were bound together not just by circumstance but by something ancient and unbreakable. As they prepared to leave the ruins, Elara glanced at Ka'rel. He looked back, glowing eyes steady and reassuring. And in that moment she understood something profound. Whatever dangers awaited them in the desert, whatever mysteries the planet held, they would face them together. Walking back across the dunes, the red sky burning above, she whispered softly, "We're stronger together." Ka'rel made a low, melodic sound, and she felt the bond respond like a living thing. And in the distance, hidden beneath the dunes, something stirred. The planet had noticed them, and it was not idle. Elara shivered. The bond between her and Ka'rel was growing, but the desert still held secrets, challenges, and dangers that neither of them could yet imagine. And something told her that their connection was only the beginning. Something far greater was waiting to reveal itself. Days passed in the desert. Elara and Ka'rel moved together like a single unit, watching the shifting dunes, listening to the wind, and guarding against dangers unseen. The ruins had changed them. They were no longer just survivors, they were explorers, uncovering secrets older than humanity itself. And yet something else had begun. Elara felt it first. A strange weariness, subtle but persistent. She blamed the desert, the sun, the lack of proper food and rest. But as the days passed, the feeling grew stronger. Her stomach felt different, uneasy, and there were moments when her head spun without warning. She kept quiet, not wanting to worry Ka'rel. Ka'rel noticed. He did not speak, but his glowing eyes followed her every movement. When she stumbled once, he caught her effortlessly, concern radiating from him in a way that words could never express. The connection between them, the bond that had grown in the ruins, was now sharper than ever. He could feel her changes, her emotions, her fears, even before she did. One evening, under a sky painted with deep red and purple, Elara could no longer ignore it. She pressed her hand to her stomach, her breath catching. Something moved, something alive. Her eyes widened in shock. Ka'rel's eyes glowed brighter, sensing her realization before she spoke. She whispered, trembling, "Ka'rel, I think I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air like a spark in the desert night. Ka'rel's body stiffened. He stepped closer, his hand hovering near hers, cautious yet gentle. Elara felt the bond between them pulse, vibrating with shared shock, curiosity, and something deeper she could not yet name. This is impossible," she murmured. How could this happen?" Ka'rel did not speak. He did not need to. His mind, connected to hers through the bond from the ruins, seemed to offer reassurance. Not fear. Not anger, wonder, awe. Something miraculous had occurred. Something the ruins, the planet, or perhaps fate itself had allowed. Elara's thoughts raced. She was human. Ka'rel was alien. Science, logic, biology. All said this should not happen. And yet it had. Something in the ruins, the crystals, the bond had made it possible. She pressed her hand to her stomach again, feeling the faint, gentle pulse of life inside her. Ka'rel made a soft, melodic sound, leaning closer. It was not speech, but it carried meaning, comfort, protection, acceptance. Elara's heart swelled. In that moment, she realized the bond between them was more than survival, more than curiosity or trust. It was life itself. Night fell. The desert's chill cut through her skin, but Ka'rel wrapped her in his arms, sharing warmth in a way that no human could. She rested against him, feeling the pulse of his strength and the connection of their minds. The child inside her moved again, and she gasped softly. Ka'rel's hand hovered protectively over her belly, energy radiating from him to shield her from the cold. For the first time, Elara allowed herself to imagine the impossible. A future where they were not just alone survivors of a crashed ship, but parents of a child unlike any other in the universe, a bridge between two species, a living symbol of connection, of unity, of hope. The desert, the planet, the ruins, they all seemed to hum around them, acknowledging the change. Something ancient and alive had noticed the new life, and the air seemed to pulse with energy, soft but powerful. Elara shivered. She realized that the pregnancy was not just personal, it was part of something much larger, and yet fear lingered. What dangers awaited them? How would the child survive? Could Ka'rel protect her from the unknown threats of this desert planet? She pressed herself closer to him, trusting in the bond, trusting in the life they had created together. When she finally closed her eyes, the bond between them was stronger than ever. Not just trust, not just understanding, but love in its rawest, most instinctive form. Ka'rel's presence was a shield, a guide, and a partner in a universe that had offered them little else. And as the desert winds whispered outside their camp, Elara knew one truth: nothing would ever be the same again. The ruins had given them knowledge, the planet had given them life, and the bond between human and alien had created a miracle. Tomorrow, the desert would still be dangerous. Predators, storms, unknown watchers, all of it would return. But tonight, under the red and purple sky, Elara and Ka'rel held each other, aware that their bond, and the child growing inside her, had changed everything forever. The desert sky darkened without warning. Clouds swirled like angry smoke, red and black mixing into a fiery haze. Elara's heart skipped. She knew storms were common here, but this one felt different. Wilder, alive, as if the planet itself were warning them. Ka'rel moved first. His glowing eyes scanned the horizon, muscles tensed, ready. Elara gripped his arm, feeling the child inside her shift nervously. The bond between them pulsed stronger than ever, a silent alarm. Danger was coming, and there was no place to hide. They scrambled to their shelter near the rocky outcrop. Sand whipped around them, sharp as knives, cutting through the thin fabric of Elara's uniform. The wind roared in her ears. She pressed herself against Ka'rel, drawing strength from his body, his calm, his unwavering focus. The bond between them was no longer just connection, it was survival itself. The storm hit fully. Sand blasted their shelter like tiny daggers. The air was thick and almost unbreathable. Elara struggled to stay upright. Ka'rel used his strength to shield her, forming a living wall against the wind. The child inside her stirred violently and she gasped. The storm's power was unlike anything she had ever faced. Suddenly, the ruin's energy crystals, faintly visible on the horizon, flared with a blinding light. Elara's mind tingled, the bond with Ka'rel vibrating with the same force. The planet was alive. It was reacting to them, to the life inside her. It was warning them, or testing them. A massive gust threw debris against their shelter. Elara cried out, but Ka'rel's strong arms held her down. Sand and dust filled the air. Her vision blurred. Time seemed to slow. Every instinct screamed to escape, to run, to survive, but there was no escape. Only Ka'rel. Only the bond. Only the life they carried together. Lightning struck the desert, illuminating the dunes in a terrifying flash. Shadows danced, moving unnaturally. Elara saw forms shifting in the sand. Watchers, predators, perhaps something ancient drawn by the life that grew inside her. Ka'rel's body glowed faintly, a protective energy radiating outward. He held her close, whispering sounds she could not understand, but the meaning was clear. You are safe with me. Then came the roar. A massive sand creature, larger than any they had seen, surged toward them. Its claws tore through the air, its roar shaking the ground. Elara screamed. Ka'rel stepped forward, placing himself between the beast and her. The bond flared, a pulse of energy that seemed to push back the storm and the creature alike. Elara felt the life inside her react, a strange, protective instinct she had never known. She reached for Ka'rel, drawing strength from him, and suddenly the storm seemed to falter, if only slightly. Together, human and alien, bonded by something greater than either could name, they faced the impossible. Ka'rel's energy surged again. The sand creature recoiled, staggering under the force. He roared, a sound that vibrated through Elara's mind, through her body, through the desert itself. The storm twisted violently, as if angry at their defiance. Debris flew. Lightning struck nearby. But Ka'rel held firm, his body glowing brighter, protecting both Elara and the child inside her. Minutes or hours passed. The storm raged, relentless, but eventually it began to weaken. The sand creature slithered back into the dunes, defeated or perhaps retreating. The wind calmed. The red sky faded to a bruised purple, and the desert was eerily quiet. Elara collapsed against Ka'rel, exhausted. Her body shook, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. The bond between them pulsed gently, reassuring, protective, alive. She pressed her hand to her stomach. The child had survived. Somehow, against impossible odds, they had survived. Ka'rel lowered his glowing head to hers. For the first time, she felt more than survival. She felt a bond that went beyond fear, beyond danger, beyond species. Life had created a connection stronger than the storm, stronger than the desert itself. Elara whispered, trembling. We made it. Ka'rel made a low melodic sound, and she felt the meaning. Yes, they had made it. And the life inside her was safe. Above them, the sky slowly lightened, red fading into soft gold. The desert, though harsh and unyielding, seemed to acknowledge their victory. And deep inside, Elara realized this. Whatever came next, whatever challenges the planet held, they would face them together. For now, the storm had passed, but the desert still had secrets. And the child inside her, human and alien, bonded by something ancient, would soon discover the world that awaited it. The desert was calm now. The storm had passed, leaving the sand smooth, the dunes glowing softly under the rising sun. Elara opened her eyes slowly, feeling warmth around her. She was not alone. Ka'rel was beside her, his silver body resting but still glowing faintly, his blue eyes scanning the horizon even in the quiet. Elara's hand instinctively went to her stomach. She felt movement, a gentle stir, rhythmic, alive. Tears filled her eyes. The child had survived the storm. Against impossible odds, they had made it. Her breath caught in awe and wonder. She had carried life from two worlds into this barren desert, but Ka'rel was gone, or at least, partially. His energy had faded during the storm, leaving him weak, almost invisible. Yet she could sense him through the bond they shared. He was still with her, still part of this miracle. The ruins had changed them, and now, They had given life to something new, something neither human nor alien, but a bridge between the two species. Elara rose slowly, carrying the small bundle of life in her arms. She did not know what to expect. The child's skin shimmered slightly under the sunlight, a mixture of her own warmth and Ka'rel's glowing essence. The bond they shared made her feel the child's heartbeat, strong and steady, pulsing with the same ancient energy that had connected them to the ruins. The desert seemed to respond. Crystals in the distant ruins glimmered faintly, sending beams of light into the sky. The planet itself seemed alive, as if it recognized the new life, the bond that now existed between human, alien, and child. A sense of hope filled Elara's chest. For the first time since the crash, she felt the weight of despair lift. She stepped toward the ruins, carrying the child carefully. The carvings on the walls now seemed clearer, almost welcoming. Humans and aliens depicted together, working, teaching, and living in harmony. It was no longer just history. It was a promise, a vision of what could be. Elara whispered softly, "You are hope, for both our worlds." She felt the bond respond in return, gentle but strong, a quiet hum that resonated through the child. Ka'rel's presence lingered, wrapping around her like a protective shield. Though he could not move freely, he had given them life, and his essence would guide them. She looked out across the desert. Where once there had been only death and sand, tiny signs of life began to emerge. Small plants sprouted, fed by the crystal's energy. The air felt richer, breathable, as if the planet itself was healing. And in the middle of this barren world, they were the seed of a new beginning. Elara knelt down, placing the child gently on a soft patch of sand. The small being stirred, eyes opening to reveal a glow, a perfect mixture of human curiosity and alien wisdom. It reached toward her and then toward the ruins, as if sensing the legacy it had inherited. She felt a surge of emotion, love, pride, hope, all mingling inside her. Ka'rel's faint glow pulsed one last time, a signal of approval, of joy, of completion. The bond between them strengthened, not in fear or survival, but in unity. Life had taken root in the desert, and with it the promise of peace and connection between two species that had once been strangers. Elara rose, holding the child close. The desert stretched endlessly before them, red dunes giving way to golden light. She knew the journey would not be easy. The planet still held secrets, dangers, and mysteries, but she was no longer alone, and neither was Ka'rel. Part of him lived in the child, part of him lived in the bond they shared, and part of him lived in her heart. She whispered to the child again, "This world is yours, and one day, you will show it how humans and aliens can live together, how life can survive even in the harshest places." The child cooed, a sound that resonated like music in the desert, harmonizing with the gentle hum of the ruins and the energy of the planet. Above them, the sky brightened. Red faded into gold and pale blue. The desert, once hostile and empty, now seemed alive with possibility. Life had returned not just to the land but to the story of humanity and aliens. And in the center of it all, a human woman and an alien's child represented hope, connection, and a future that no one had ever imagined. Elara smiled, holding the child close to Ka'rel's remaining glow. Together they had survived the crash, the storms, and the desert. Together they had created a new beginning, and the universe would never be the same again.